Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers defeat the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-0 in the final game of the regular season. And Sam Rosen's last broadcast in what was a tremendous 40-year career. The Rangers, for warm-ups, went out and had Sam Rosen jerseys with the number 40 on the back. And a nice tribute as well. He was the first star of the game, which was a nice send-off. So what has really been a disappointing season, to put it mildly, at least the way that it ends, Sam Rosen can kind of get his full acknowledgement in a game that really was meaningless towards the standings. The Rangers, they go 2-0 in the last two games after elimination. And for Tampa Bay, I mean, absolutely nothing. The Lightning did pretty much have their full lineup in there. Due to more, cap reasons and injuries on the Lightning's part. I mean, Vasilevsky wasn't in there. It was Johansson. But still, it was pretty much all of Tampa's top players were in. But for them, they're just looking to not get hurt and just looking to get through unscathed. And, there was a sort of a friendly fire situation where Kucherov knocked into his own guy. And that was a little bit of a scare. I think he's fine. But they're really just getting ready for that Florida Panthers series, which I believe begins on Tuesday, which is pretty late into the NHL playoff schedule, but I digress. But a lot of news today in Rangerland, and really one that was a major shock. And it's the fact that there was a report that came out that Artemi Panarin um, was involved in a sexual harassment incident that stemmed from December 2023 with a former Rangers employee. I believe it was a woman who um, was a part of the social media team. And it does explain why there really has been no social, media um, involvement really with the Rangers. And, that could explain why, because I believe she was dismissed. I'm not sure if she was dismissed or if she left on her own accord, but before this past season began. So not to get into the particulars of that, but obviously, if you read the report, obviously, fairly disturbing on the part of Artemi Panarin, but he did play. I wasn't 100% sure that he would, but everyone's saying that's involved, like the Rangers, the NHL, is that this is a resolved issue. And so, based on the way that everything transpired tonight, I don't think that it's going to affect things moving forward. I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I think that there should be some sort of punishment of some kind, but it just doesn't seem like there is. And again, it's tough when you don't know the exact details and specifics. It's tough to kind of speculate. But again, from what was reported, doesn't exactly sound like a great situation that Artemi Panarin was involved in with this Rangers employee. And I believe it was on a road trip. Again, at the middle of last season. And, Panarin didn't want to comment on it. I'm not surprised. And, I think he was asked if there was any thought to him not playing tonight. And he asked the reporter back, why? And then the response was, well, because of, the news of what happened. And he said, no, there was not a thought that he wouldn't play. So, where that leaves him as far as with him 1 year left on his deal, I don't think that it doesn't seem like that's going to affect things. Now, if Panarin is traded or however they proceed, like it seems like this is somewhat independent of that. But I think it's something that all of us fans will at least have in our minds a little bit. And like the optics of extending him, right? Like not the greatest look, but the Rangers are really doing what they can to sweep this under the rug completely. And so that was a definite, you know, sort of bombshell report that comes out. Um, Panarin was really so uninvolved in this game, like negatively or positively. So it kind of worked out well where they didn't even really need to bring him up. He was 1 point away from 90 points. And he actually didn't record a point in the Panthers game or this game. And that's the crazy thing about that is the Rangers scored 9 goals combined in those games and no points for Panarin, which is just kind of weird in and of itself. Um, but that is something to, at the very least, consider as his future already was in somewhat doubt. if I had to guess whether they'll be on the team at the start of next season, I would say yes. But I mean, again, with only 1 year left on the deal, I'm sure all options will be explored. And it's one of those things where if they can't come to some sort of extension before the season begins, then it's kind of on the clock going to the trade deadline, right? And it sort of depends on how the Rangers do as to what his future will be with the team. So that happened. Um, as if this season can't get any more messed up. Um, but let's, do what we normally do. We'll discuss the lineup. Um, on defense, Carson Soucy was out due to illness, and Earl Vakanainen was back in. So the pairs were Miller with Borgen. Matthew Robertson was with Adam Fox. So Matthew Robertson plays his second NHL game and his first NHL regular season game at Madison Square Garden. And so it was Vakanainen with Jones. And, without Soucy, it kind of felt like things were a bit better, but it's not fair to even go there because, again, this is sort of an exhibition style game. So it's tough to make, crazy judgments, but just based on the eye test, like, I felt like Vakanainen's game was better than Soucy. That's not even taking Jones into account, but I don't know, as far as, like, advanced metrics and things like that, it is possible that Soucy graded out, like, better than Vakanainen. So, again, like, Soucy is someone that has a higher cap hit than Vakanainen is really paid to be a purely, like, 6th or 7th defenseman. Soucy is not. Soucy, like, with the money again, it's not like it's a crazy cap hit, but it is one that really he is more in that, like, second pair ilk. Third pair at worst. So we'll see what happens. I mean, could this have been Keandre Miller's last game as a Ranger? Maybe. But that one we really don't know at all. Like, he's going to be a restricted free agent. That one is tough to say. But that was the defense on this game. And so Calvin DeHaan, not surprisingly, he did not play after those 3 games or so that he played upon acquisition. And then the Rangers got Soucy, and then that was it. DeHaan never played again as a Ranger. For the forwards, the change that was made in this game, and again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but it is odd. Sam Carrick back in the lineup, Juuso Parssinen out. After Parssinen had a pretty nice, a good game against Florida and had looked better lately. He is on the younger side and someone that you'd probably want to give somewhat of a look to just for future reasons, but he was out. Carrick was in, and Brett Berard stayed out of the lineup. And that's another one that doesn't quite make a lot of sense. Again, it's just odd more than anything else. So with that in mind, the lines were pretty much switched up a good amount. And so it was Panarin, Trocheck, Perreault, JT Miller centering Offman and Lafreniere, Zibanejad centering Kreider and Cooley, which ended up really being the best line. And it's kind of a blast from the past situation with Zibanejad and Kreider. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And the fourth line ends up being Brodzinski, Carrick, and Rempe. But they did have Zibanejad with Kreider, and it's just interesting knowing that this very well could be and probably will be Kreider's last game as a Ranger, right? I mean, there's still 2 years left in the deal. It's not like it's at 100% guarantee, but all indications really seem like that is going to be it for him. And what do you know? Like in the last game, they kind of worked some magic to the point where, they're both a +3. Zibanejad gets 2 goals and assists. Kreider gets a goal and assist, and Zibanejad ends up hitting the 20-goal mark, which really kind of came out of nowhere, even within this game. I mean, he scored both goals within the last 7 minutes of the game. So, and so now that makes 8 straight seasons for Zibanejad with 20 goals. So it was a horrendous, amazingly bad first half or so of the season for Zibanejad, but got to give him some credit. And even though on the whole it was disappointing, he really was not one of the bad players on the stretch. He really was better, mostly on the wing with JT Miller. I think, for him, I think he's better at right wing at this point in his career, but you do with that versatility. It does seem as if he will be back next year with him having a full no movement clause. That's going to be very important. His production and getting him going, that's really going to be important because you don't really have much of a choice there. He's probably going to be back. And then Chris Kreider, and again, what was probably his last game, he gets a goal as well, was not able to get a power play goal. And the funny thing about that is they put him on the number 1 unit knowing that he was tied with Camille Henry for the most power play goals in Ranger history. And then he ends up taking a penalty on that power play. So, kind of a joke there. But and as far as the power play is concerned, the last power play goal called by Sam Rosen was won by Vincent Trocheck um, at UBS Arena against the Islanders. So that ends up being the last power play goal that he calls. Speaking of Vincent Trocheck, um, he gets another shorthanded goal. So the Rangers with 18 shorthanded goals this season, which is crazy. Second most in franchise history after the 93-94 Rangers, who had 20. And Trocheck has 6 shorthanded goals, 3 in his last 5 games, and about 4 or 5 in, like, within the last month. So just crazy there. And Trocheck, at least statistically, somewhat like Zibanejad. Trocheck's season's been a lot different than Zibanejad's, just in many ways, but Trocheck ends up, with 26 goals, 59 points, so just shy of getting that 60 mark. But, the numbers end up being solid for him. But again, for me, and for almost everyone on this team, it fell flat from expectations from the previous season. And there ended up being 4 players that played all 82 games, and that was Zibanejad, Trocheck, Lafreniere, and Cooley. Um, and look, on the Lafreniere front, he only played 12 minutes and 20 seconds. He was the second least. Brendan Othman had the least time on ice. I mean, JT Miller only played 12:57. It was a bit weird in that regard, but Lafreniere, an extremely disappointing season. But the crazy thing is, he ended up, and it was very close. Panarin was by far number one. Lafreniere ended up with the second most even strength points in the team. So as bad as he was, it still says something, and maybe speaks more poorly to other players. But he is, again, like someone that, look, he'll be in trade rumors, I'm sure, and there's a chance that he's moved. There is. But I would think that he'll probably be back at it next year, and you just hope for new results with probably a new head coach. Because in all likelihood, this was Peter Laviolette's last game. So a lot of final games, right? I mean, Sam Rosen, Peter Laviolette, Chris Kreider, and that's just kind of it could be a lot more than that, right? That's just kind of what we're guessing now. Um, and I don't think it matters at all. The fact that the Rangers, kind of won these last 2 games, it doesn't. I mean, the Laviolette decision was made before that. This, shouldn't mean a thing. And you get Igor Shesterkin with a shutout as well. So Igor, the stats don't end up great on the whole, but Shesterkin ends up with 6 shutouts on the year, which is tied for most in his career with that great season he had in 2022, the MVP caliber season where he was an MVP finalist. Um, so, like, considering how bad the Rangers were, he did have his struggles for a large part of the season, but, he would be, for my book, someone that, at least from a play standpoint, that I'm not, like, concerned with. Yes, is the contract exorbitant? $11.5 million. You know, that is a lot, of course, but at the same time, like, what are you gonna do? You don't have alternatives there. I'd rather him be on this team than not, and you hope to allocate the money properly elsewhere. So let's, kind of go through this game again. Kind of gave a lot of information right there. But I thought the Rangers, they came out really slow. Again, one of those situations where the Rangers only got 2 shots on goal for all of the first period. I mean, it's stuff like that that happens so often. And Tampa Bay, while they weren't great, they were certainly controlling play. They were the better team in that first period for sure. Hit at least one post. And so the Rangers, were probably a little fortunate to come out of the first period tied, especially for the fact that Adam Fox hooked Brendan Hagel at 15:47. And then towards the very end of the first period, Will Borgen tripped Zemgus Girgensons. And as much as Borgen I thought was good upon, acquiring him from Seattle and they gave him that 5-year extension, I think Borgen's game probably, dipped a bit. Look, he's going to be one of the few that you can say for sure will be part of that defense next year. Will he be paired with Keandre Miller? We'll see. But Borgen takes that penalty, but it leads to a Rangers run to goal. And it would be Vincent Trocheck, his 26th goal of the season from JT Miller at 102 of the second period. And just kind of not a smart play by Braden Point, a back pass that I guess Kucherov might have been in the vicinity, maybe Hedman, but Trocheck was the one that intercepts it right at the blue line, and a quick passing play from JT Miller to Trocheck, and somewhat similar to the goal that we saw them score against the Florida Panthers. That will likely be a duo next year on the penalty kill. I mean, those two, it's been chronicled, and that they're best friends growing up, and I think that We saw some chemistry between those two. While they're both centers, so we're not going to see them get even strength. We probably will on the penalty kill. And so, again, Trocheck impressive with the amount of shorter goals that he's had, and the team as a whole makes it 1-0. Rangers played a better brand of hockey in the second. It's not as if they were dominant by any means, but it beats having two shots on goal from the first. Um, and in the second period, you had a couple of penalties. There's a couple of Matt Rempe opportunities. Want to, bring that up as well. Rempe, I think, is someone that's, intriguing as far as the fourth line for next year's. I think the bottom six has a lot of worthy candidates internally and young players. It's really that the core and the top six, and a lot of the defense that I think those are the bigger question marks. But at 15:48, Chernak interferes with Gabe Perreault. Gabe Perreault, I think on him, I think it's in his best interest, unless he has an amazing training camp, for him to start in Hartford. I think that'd be my preference. I don't think he's NHL ready. I think he could definitely use the reps and really opportunity in Hartford. Brendan Othman's an interesting story. He is one that it's kind of a make or break year next year for him. And the hope would be that he starts with the NHL team. Um, and you saw some flashes, but he still doesn't have a goal. I mean, right? What is it now? He's probably played about somewhere at 25 or so NHL games at this point, and did not have a single one. You call it snake bitten, you can say whatever you want. That's not good. But anyway, Rangers go on the power play, and Kreider was on it. So again, Laviolette, they were aware of what was going on. And again, it almost, you know, it's almost like a little bit of a hint that he won't be back. Although, look, like it's the last game of the season. If you put it in that context as well, you want to sort of break that record before the end of the season. I get that too. But Kreider trips Nick Paul at 16:01. So again, like the one power play the Rangers had goes away in 13 seconds, and is kind of symbolic of how just awful this power play was this season. One of the major reasons why the Rangers fell 6 points shy of that final playoff spot, which did go to the Montreal Canadiens. Really, Rangers should be ashamed. The fact that Montreal, and Columbus, Rangers ended up finishing behind. I didn't even get there yet as far as what it means for the draft, but the Rangers ended up finishing by Montreal, Columbus, and Detroit. The Rangers did finish ahead of the Islanders. So it's 4-4 for a bit. And then we go to the third. Nothing happens to that score wise. And so it's 1-0 going to the third. And the Rangers take a 2-0 lead, 4:02 into the third. Chris Kreider, in what was likely his last goal as a Ranger, scores his 22nd goal of the season from Zibanejad and Cooley. This one was reviewed, but it was a good goal. It goes under the crossbar. Kreider, sort of gets his own rebound, was in good position. And look, he still can score goals. The fact that he scored 22 this year, where he really didn't even try most of the time and just looked like a shell of himself, does tell you that there's a trade to be had there, you know, with Chris Kreider in the offseason. So that makes it 2-0. And then at 12:50, Zibanejad scores his 19th goal of the season from Keandre Miller off of a faceoff win by Zibanejad. Goals 3 and 4 by Mika were very similar. It's just the person who got the assist was different. So Zibanejad wins it clean. Zibanejad's in good position, and Keandre Miller finds him for the one-time slap shot goal. That makes it 3-0. And then Zibanejad scores again, his 20th goal of the season from Kreider. So again, kind of a fitting way for Sam Rosen's broadcasting career to end, with the two longest tenured Rangers connecting at the end. And again, it's Zibanejad's 20th goal from Kreider. So a very rare primary assist from Kreider, again, off of the face-off win. And it goes past Johansson for the goal. And the Rangers win 4-0. Shesterkin gets the shutout. What it means for the draft. The Rangers right now are in the number 11 slot. And, you know, I wish that they were at 10. The Islanders is the one spot that I think that probably, it could have been different. But all in all, like, can't complain much as far as where they are, right? It's not as if, like, it kind of was what it was. And even the Rangers winning this game tonight, like, just individually, even if they lost, even if they got no points, they still would have ended up in the same spot, which is right now at number 11. And so that means that while it's very unlikely, the most you can move up is 10 spots. So by being 11, they could move up to number 1. They can go to number 1 or number 2. They can stay at 11, or, they can move down to 12. And I guess I think it's possible for them to move down to 13, although highly, highly unlikely. So really, you're looking at likely 11 or 12 with sort of the long shot chance of 1 or 2. Now, obviously, if they win the lottery, you're going to keep the pick. That's a no-brainer, and goes without saying. But if you don't win it, I think that it's an interesting thing if Chris Drury is the GM, which unfortunately I tend to believe he will be, as far as whether they keep the pick this year and give it to Pittsburgh next year or vice versa. And optically, I would think that they would keep the pick this year, but it's almost like if you give up the pick um, this year and keep it for next year, it's almost like you're admitting that you may not be a great team next year. And look, I think that could be a reasonable take. I think that could be a realistic take, especially with the kind of uncertain nature of this roster. And so I don't think it's a slam dunk one way or the other. I guess I would lean that they're probably going to keep the pick, but I would not have a big problem. They say, hey, we want to keep it next year with it being unprotected. And, like, what if the Rangers are worse next year, which I don't think we can rule out. So that will be a decision that is officially made 48 hours prior to the draft. So we won't know that for a while. As far as the lottery is concerned, that probably will happen, I'd say about 3 weeks. Usually takes place towards, I think, the tail end of the first round of the playoffs. If I remember correctly, maybe this early second round, somewhere there. And so maybe the Rangers get lucky again as we thought they did when they got Kakko and Lafreniere. Obviously, we know how that's gone, but just the idea of them moving up in the draft, it has happened before. Maybe luck will be on their side, but Rangers season comes to an end. Kind of a crazy day with the Panarin news. And obviously just, really feel good for Sam Rosen more than anything that he was able to get the applause he got. He gets the first star of the game. And he seemed to enjoy, the fact the Rangers were able to get the 4-0 win against the Lightning. And the Rangers season ends at a very, very disappointing 39-36-7, 85 points. Coming off of a President's Trophy season and making the Eastern Conference Final, just a disaster that has already led to a bunch of trades in season, and I think is going to lead to a lot more news coming up shortly, likely with the dismissal of Peter Laviolette. Again, nothing's official, but we will certainly discuss it if and when that does happen. So should be a pretty eventful offseason for the New York Rangers.